So, welcome back to Northern Monkeys. This is just a quick one today, for thinking about how different tech choices work. For those that don't know, tech choices are like very small parts of your force. In this case, bringing a lone captain in Terminator Armour. It's kind of a weird little choice, but let's see how it works and my experiences with it, and see if it can improve your games. So this is the theory behind this idea, is of just taking a single captain with Terminator armor in your Space Marine army. It's a bit of a weird one, but essentially he fulfills the niche of a kind of deep strike action monkey style unit. Um, Now, traditionally this is done by units like, really cool guys like the Reavers. Everyone loves taking Reavers. But also, sometimes people take jump pack intercessors because maybe that's a unit that's horrendously undercosted for what it does. Um, but yeah, it's very different though to jump pack intercessors. They're more of like a very normal version of it. You see other armies have versions of like this with the Sisters of Battle with their Seraphim. You've got Chaos Space Marines with their Raptors. Everyone tends to put at least one or two units of these kind of cheap action monkey kind of style units. Orc Storm Boys are another great example of this. But essentially what these are, for the term action monkey, it's a little unit that you don't intend to do a lot of damage with, doesn't cost too many points, and normally has the deep strike rule. And the idea is that these can just come down, and if you're using the cards for Prior Nexus, they can just complete an action or take an objective that you don't want to commit a big unit, one of your damaging units, to having to do. And it's stuff like in turn 2, if you draw like behind enemy lines and engage on all fronts, it's not really that good. But with these sort of units, they can just come in and do that, and if they die, they die. So it's quite good. Now, the captain in Terminator armor, he's a bit of a weird one for this, because traditionally you'd be like, well, why would I do that? He's a little more expensive at 95 points than other traditional units that do this. However, I think there's a lot of reasons to go for him. Personally, I've noticed that he's quite a bit more durable. The 2-up save with access to free armor of contempt from his own ability, that's really, really good. And he has a smaller footprint. A big 5-man unit can take up a real clump of the footprint, whereas just the single base of the Captain in Terminator armor, while it's quite large, it doesn't necessarily take up as much room as an entire unit on his own. He also notably rerolls his charges, and doesn't have to be leading a unit for this. So, I mean, it's not great odds of scoring a charge out of Deep Strike, but I think this guy has about a 60% chance of doing it. And once he does get in, he can again use that free stratagem on himself. With his Relic Fist, he can really have the chance of slapping an entire unit. I've had him go in stratagems like Honor the Chapter. That's what he gives that for free on himself. And all of a sudden, this guy's like hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, AP3 if you're in the Assault Doctrine. It's like, even with the I run him with a Relic Weapon just for the volume of attacks. And he's actually killed an entire unit of Space Marines on his own before. Now, that required some lucky rolling, not rolling any ones essentially through the whole set of dice, but it's entirely possible. And again, that's not the best thing about him. The best thing about him is his ability to sort of deep strike in and cause your opponent a real headache. And when he's in there, they then have to deal with him. There's nothing, they've got to stop him from, like, he'll take the home objective that you've got some cheap chaff like cultists or something sat on. He'll just chop through them in a couple of turns, especially if he gets a round of shots off with his Stormbolter, which I would recommend. The combi weapon's fun for its dev wounds, but I think the Stormbolter's volume is just better, especially hitting on 2s versus 3s. Now, enhancements wise, if you had the spare 10-15 points, I don't think the Ghostly Weave Cloak from the Shadow Raven Guard kind of detachment gives him stealth and lone op, makes him even tougher to deal with, and the lone op can just make him vulnerable to all shooting. So if he came in down in the backfield with that, all of a sudden your opponent has to go and deal with him in melee, which again, he's a 2-up save, free armor of contempt, a 4-up invuln. Most stuff will struggle to shift him in his 6 wounds. And then the flesh is weak as well. The Iron Hands detachment is ever popular, and again, 10 points. Gives him a 4-up feel no pain. Considering how many wounds he has, that's pretty good. So that's the theory behind this tech. It's not commonly seen, but I've used it myself. I've seen other people kind of use it. I think a lot of people have done out of the kind of necessity of the Leviathan box if you're a new Space Marine player. But if you really are thinking about doing these actions, which are more and more important in the prior Nexus, then this is what you want, this kind of a unit. And again, he's only 95 points, so he's not really a league away from Assault Intercessors with Jump Pack, which are the traditional wisdom for stuff like this. And it's worth noting as well, with him being more survivable, that 4-up invo and the 2-up save, he is able to do those actions that require you to survive until your next turn, which I think is quite important. There's a lot of units that can just look at 5 Assault Intercessors and snap their fingers and blow them to pieces. This guy is a lot more nebulous to kill. So just a quick wrap up here, kind of put my money where my mouth is and talk about having actually used this guy before. Again, he's quite a lot of points to invest, so I can see why people would want to go the more traditional route, just using things like scouts and assault intercessors. But genuinely, I think I've ran this combo about 3 times. Well, combo I say, but it's just a captain and assault in Terminator Armour. So yeah, I ran mine from Leviathan again, just to see what it would do. Originally, I liked the Librarian in the Terminator unit, so therefore the captain was running around on his own. And genuinely, in some games I had, he won me the game in terms of the sheer amount of points these little utility units can score. I remember a game against Orcs, he came in, deployed a teleport homer in the backfield, killed a unit that was holding the enemy backfield, I think some mech guns or something like that, and then captured the enemy home field. Another game against Tyranids, he did very similar things. Just he's very small and awkward to screen out. Just because if you fit him in the corner, you barely need like 2 inches of space to come in, which a big unit of like jump pack intercessors just can't do. So yeah, really think this guy's good. Doesn't see like any real meta play necessarily, but I think if you've got this model lying around, it's really worth using. I've had games where he scored me 12 points on his own, and like I said, he's just awkward to deal with. He'll just fight an entire unit of like orc boys on his own. He's got 2-up save, the armor of contempts for free. They're just bouncing off him, and he's killing multiple of them every single turn. Now he only has 1 OC, so he's not like gonna storm a point. But if you kill an opponent that's using like a little chaff unit like cultists or something down to 1 model, he's still at least contesting their home objective, which in a lot of missions becomes a big deal, where kind of holding your primary point or your home objective point can give you more points for holding the midfield. So yeah, I rate this guy. He's a cool little model, he's a cool little unit, and he doesn't see any play, and that's a shame. So this is just another way to think about using him. I think Terminators themselves are a unit that is really struggling to find a place in Space Marine armies, especially the standard Terminators with the Stormbolters and Power Fists. So I think often you wouldn't take a Terminator captain because you don't want to take Terminators. But try running him on his own, see how he does for you, and yeah, let me know if you have any success with it. So thanks for watching, guys. Just a quick one here, talking about one of my favourite little tech choices. This was inspired by seeing a Death Guard combo where people were running a Rhino with 2 Malignant Blade Casters in it, and it was doing its best Land Raider Redeemer impression. That's something I'm going to talk about next week, hopefully once I've had a chance to play it. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good weekend.